proud member of the Board of Trustees, the Board of Directors rather, of the Planned Parenthood Action Fund. And here, another reason we are here. Ronnie was a volunteer at Planned Parenthood in Hempstead for many years, and I would worry about her safety every time she went there. And we still worry about the safety of everyone who stands up for human rights. Again, Ronnie, let's hear it. Yeah, a few people from my office. Leslie Dwyer is here, and Tracy Thatcher are here. They put this together. And Tracy's here with her husband Peter, who is the proprietor of this establishment. This is a cool place. I also want to recognize my chief of staff, John Loyola Davis, who's here, who's our office. So again, great thanks to Peter and the people who own this super secret place. So, when Jim Gaughran was our state senator, we had a close relationship, and in part we had that close relationship because I've known you for a long time, and Ronnie and your wonderful wife Carol taught together in Glen, Cove. We lost a tremendous and incredible partner in the state Senate when we had redistricting, and now we have someone who doesn't fill your shoes at all on any level. We're going to talk about that a little more when I introduce Kim Keiserman, who's running for the state Senate. Well, she does that like that.
She's going to do great.
So what I'm going to do, this is the program, I'm going to recognize other people here who are in elected office or have been, and if I miss anybody, you'll let me know and yell at me, and it's okay. Jim is going to speak, and then Kim is going to speak, and then I'm going to wrap it up. Jim Gaughran has fought for good government since the 1980s. Something like that. When he was on, in fact, I campaigned for you. In an election that we should have won. And Bob Machida is here as well. And I campaigned for Bob Machida. I was Bob Machida's campaign manager. You would have won if you had a better campaign manager. Funny stories for another day. Jim Gaughran is one of the most decent, conscientious, hard-working people I know who's been in government. He's not in government to promote any political party. He's not in government to promote any rigid agenda. He was there to listen and to serve. I want to invite you to give a warm and rousing round of applause for somebody who's one of the great people in government, and we'll get him back in government someday.
I'm not in government anymore, so I can do anything I want, say anything I want. And honestly, I don't go to a lot of political events anymore, but I couldn't say no to Chuck. He gave me a call. And I'm glad that he has decided to make a major portion of his re-election campaign revitalizing pinball. This is great. We are great friends. And we did have a great relationship. But most importantly, we were able to accomplish so many great things. And for me, it was fairly easy because a lot of these issues, Chuck had started. Chuck was pushing it for years and years and years and couldn't get anywhere because, if you remember, Tracy, when you were knocking on doors, we still had a Republican state Senate back then that didn't want to do things like fund properly Glen Cove schools. So we did accomplish a lot of great things. In fact, one of the big issues was the Glen Cove schools, because one of the first things Chuck brought to my attention, which was during the campaign, and the voters told me as well, was that the Glen Cove public school system was being treated like a wealthy community in terms of getting state aid, simply because there were some very beautiful homes, mansions on the water that was spewing the state aid formula. So Chuck had an amendment to the state aid formula that would make it clear that Glen Cove should be treated like other school districts that are struggling in terms of getting them much more funding, and we got record funding for the Glen Cove School District, and I thank Chuck for helping me. People were mentioning that they went yesterday, and I didn't. I would have loved to have gone, but I had to go somewhere else, to the Pelosi book signing. What was the title of the book?
It was The Art of Power.
The Art of Power. So, when I went to Albany, I quickly realized that Chuck Lavine had an awful lot of power in the halls of the Capitol. And you know, there are politicians, elected officials who have power, and they obtain power and use power for different purposes and in different ways. You know, there are some who just want to be on television every 5 minutes, and then they build up power that way. They become celebrities. There's some that build up, you know, huge war chests, and then they never have to worry about re-elections, and they sprinkle money all over the place, and they got a lot of power in the halls of Albany. But I realized that Chuck's power was different, and really was much more important, because Chuck's power came from the fact, and comes from the fact, that he's a man of integrity. He's somebody who, when he gives you his word, he keeps his word, and he's somebody who cares about people, cares about the community. And what I quickly found out in Albany was that people, both in the Senate and in the Assembly, would often go to Chuck on some of the biggest issues we had of the day to try to figure out what is the right path, where are we going. And Chuck would not be somebody who would solicit you, tell you how to vote. He wasn't somebody who would be bombastic and trying to push people to vote on a lot of these issues. No, he would just very quietly listen and give you words of wisdom. And it was always the best. It was always right on target. And I could see across the whole state legislature his influence and how he got a lot of important things done, whether it was the issue of choice, infrastructure, whatever it was. Chuck Lavine was a big power up there, and he still is, and I say that in a good sense.
Thank you, my friend.
But there was one time he got it wrong. He got it wrong big time. And that was when we were both running for re-election in 2020. You know, 2020 was not a lot of fun running for re-election because of COVID. You know, 2018 was great. We were knocking on doors. We had headquarters. You know, we could go around and do all sorts of things. In 2020, it really got monotonous because we were stuck on Zoom. It was just one Zoom call, meeting after another. And we would have all our meet the candidate nights. We'd have all our debates on Zoom. So there was this one morning where we had a Zoom, and it was Chuck and his opponent, myself, my opponent, other candidates running for other offices. And you could tell that the people on the screens didn't want to be there. You know, our opponents were just, spouting their usual Republican talking points, whatever it was. You know, we would, talking about our accomplishments, what we wanted to try to do. Nobody was listening. But then Chuck decided he was going to liven the thing up, because there was another guy who was running for a different office who was on that Zoom debate, who was saying all sorts of crazy things. His Democratic opponent wasn't there. So Chuck decided, well, you know what, I'm going to step up and try to say some things. So Chuck started, debating him and going after him. And then he got me to debate him and go after this guy. And it turned into this wild slugfest between us and this other guy running for office. And he was way out there. I mean, he had these crazy conspiracy theories he was pushing. And every time he had an answer, he was telling us about something different in his background. He said, well, when I worked for NASA, I did this. When I was a guy who, was a CEO on the major Wall Street firm, and he was going on and on about all this stuff, and we're looking at each other on the screens, and what? So, when the Zoom was over, Chuck and I spoke on the phone, and Chuck said, the one good thing I've learned in all my years in politics is that total whack jobs like that, we never ever have to worry that they will ever get elected. We will never see this guy again. You take that to the bank. And of course he was talking about future Congressman George Santos. Oh, that's the only time Chuck has ever done that. But we've got to work hard this year, not only for Chuck and Kim and Re-Elect Tom Suozzi, and we know what's at stake nationally. Everything is on the line, so please do it all you can. And thank you for inviting me.
Before I introduce Kim, there's something else that I wanted to say about how important it was to be able to work with Jim. For years, we struggled to do something about Liberty Water. And no matter how much progress we made, there was always some issue, serious issue. And some of those issues didn't just come from the other party. Some of them came from some of our political, quote-unquote, allies who didn't want to see a water authority here in Seacliff and North Shore, because then their constituents were going to complain. And you know exactly who I'm talking about. There was intrigue galore and plenty of backstabbing and backfighting. Jim, that would not have happened without you. That wouldn't have happened without you. And I think everyone here appreciates that, along with the fact that we brought together millions and millions of dollars to the North Shore School District and all the other school districts in this part of the island. Again, let's give it up for one of the... So now, if I had a real partner in the state Senate, if I had a real partner, I'm going to say something I shouldn't say. If I had a real partner in the state Senate, instead of someone who does everything he can to frustrate the state of New York and Nassau County from moving forward, we could do a lot. We could bring many, many millions of dollars back to this area, which is critical. I don't mean to be venal and mercenary, but that's part of what we do, and Jim and I work together so well to do that. We now have someone who's uniquely qualified to be in the state Senate, and that's Kim Keiserman. Kim's background is in education. She's been an educator, an educational consultant, a civil activist, and an environmentalist. And in addition to that, and I bet you'd be surprised that I know this, she once worked as a fellow at the Tannenbaum Foundation in Manhattan, named after the late, great Rabbi Mark Tannenbaum, who was a true civil libertarian. Kim has every quality to represent this district, and represent this district the way it should be represented. In addition to which, she's a mother of two daughters who are extraordinary. She is just a great person, and it is my pleasure to run for office with her. So please, and Ronnie, I'm not going to forget the ERA, please give it up for Kim Keiserman.
It is an absolute honor to be here with you. For many years in my work as an activist, this is before I knew Chuck Lavine, I would just go to events where good people were gathered to make change and get things done on Long Island. And who did I always see at those events? Who was always the person who was stepping up to speak up when something needed to be changed on Long Island? It was Chuck Lavine. So I secretly admired you for many years. We're starting to get to know each other now, and It's a wonderful experience. As I'm standing here, I'm feeling such a mix of emotion. The first one, I'll say, is excitement at the prospect of being on the ballot this November with a strong pro-choice woman at the top and the New York State. The next emotion that I'm feeling is humility at the idea of filling the shoes of someone like Senator Jim Gaughran, who has such an amazing record of service to this community, of working to deliver for this community, and of just gaining the love and respect of so many people that I love and respect. So the idea of trying to fill those shoes, I have to say, it's humbling, but it's also, again, exciting. Another thing I'm feeling is privilege. The idea of partnering with Chuck Lavine, who is doing so many good things in the Assembly and bringing so much to this community. The idea that I might get to be there helping him do those things is absolutely privilege. The last thing I'll say is I feel ready to take on Jack Martin's and his style of divisive, fear-mongering, do-nothing politics that is bringing nothing back and in no way a partner to Chuck Lavine. Yesterday, I had an experience that really kind of solidified the way that I'm thinking about this race. I went to Long Island University, and I had the privilege of not only seeing Nancy Pelosi speak, but due to a nice favor called in by someone else, I actually got to meet her behind the scenes. And it was really amazing because I really reflected on how we have some things in common. Not that I'm thinking I'm going to be Speaker of the House one day, but like me, she's someone who didn't run for office until she was done raising her children and they were pretty much grown. So I found that inspiring. I found everything about her inspiring, all that she's accomplished. She had this great conversation with Congressman Steve Israel about her most recent book, and she said a few things that really stuck in my mind. And a lot of what she said was aimed, I think, at women who are working for change or even running for office, like myself. One thing she said was, you've got to be able to take a punch, and you've got to be able to throw a punch. She also said, most of the time, the punches, she didn't even notice them. She was working so hard, she knew what she believed in and was trying to accomplish. She knew her why. That's what she called it. So the punches just didn't even land. She didn't even notice them. And at the very end of the conversation, she talked about, what would be said at the pearly gates at the very end? What would she be asked? And she said, St. Peter would say, show me your wounds. Because if you didn't have any wounds, it meant that you hadn't been in the fight. You hadn't worked for anything, right? And so all of that stuck in my mind. I went home, I was sat down, I was relaxing a little bit. I was going to do a Facebook post about meeting Nancy Pelosi. I never got around to it. Because what happened was Jack Martin's attacked me on social media. It was the first time he's done that. I'm sure it won't be the last. But he attacked me on social media, and it was an absurd, scurrilous, and misleading attack, implying terrible things about me that made no sense whatsoever. It doesn't matter. You can go read it if you like on social media. I don't know if I would have been quite so ready for that moment if I hadn't listened to the words of Nancy Pelosi just a couple of hours ago about being able to take a punch and then being able to throw a punch and being able to even ignore that punch because you know what you're fighting for. Fully funded public schools, reproductive rights for all women regardless of their income, protection of our waterfront environment and a serious approach to confronting the challenge of climate change. Working for communities that are welcoming, affordable, vibrant, and just. I know what my why is. So in that moment, I said, okay. I hit back, and I went to bed, and I slept very well last night. Any bad days. I'm feeling really ready, I'm feeling really excited, I'm feeling very honored, and I'm feeling very humbled. I'm feeling all of these great things, but I need all of you to help me get across the finish line. The truth is, I'm trying to flip a seat held by an incumbent who's been in public life for 30 years. He hasn't done very much for people. They don't seem to really know who he is, and nobody can identify anything that he's delivered for the communities, but he's got some name recognition. So I need everybody here to come out and knock doors with us, support us, work so that Chuck and I can be partners in getting things done, delivering and upholding the values of this community. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kim. I just want to mention that the person who ran against you in the primary, Brad Schwartz, is here to support you and to support me as well. Look, I know it's getting late. I know the Jets are playing tonight. I only intend to speak for about a half hour. But before I make a few remarks, addressing all of you about how important this election is. Jim and Ronnie and I have a very close friend, Linda Beagleshorn. And you all know her son was murdered at Parkland. Her husband, Michael, who was a wonderful guy, passed away, it's about 3 weeks ago. I was very privileged to be able to sponsor and pass something called the Scott J. Beagle Unfinished Receiver Law, which outlaws ghost guns in the state of New York. That would not have happened without a partner on the Senate side. Jim, thank you for that. Gun violence is following us everywhere, even in our own local communities. We need someone who will be a champion of responsible gun safety legislation. Jack Martins is the opposite, just the opposite. He's a wholly owned subsidiary of the NRA. He's so deep in the pockets of the NRA that if you really want to find him, you've got to dig real deep. You've got to move aside those old copper pennies and lint, and then if you're lucky, you will find Jack Martins. Let's give another warm round of applause. Yeah. Bear with me while I get into some big trouble here as I try to recognize people who've been in office or are presently in office. Of course, we have Jim Gaughran, who served us so well. Marsha Silverman from the Glen, Cove City. Our dear friend James Versacchi was here. He's going to be coming back at some point. Pete Johnson, thank you, Pete. And again, Peter, for making this beautiful place available to us. Thank you. People Dr. Lupanko, who served with great distinction on the Glen Cove City Council. From our school boards, we have David Ludmar, your own David Ludmar. Jared Durkee, who's here, who's somewhere, who comes out of my shop, who's Maria Mosca is here. Sarah Jones is here. Yeah, I just said. Yes, he's here. Stand up so we can applaud. Yes. Silverman is here?
I am here.
Yeah.
I'll be back.
Judge Steve Yeager, retired. An aging former public defender. It's good to see you. Cindy Salitti, who is the chair of the If there's anybody I've missed, just give me a sign. Why are we here? And we really appreciate your being here. It has to do with a few things. First and foremost, it has to do with human rights. And it has to do with women's rights. Now, on the back of your ballot, you are going to find Proposition 1. That will guarantee abortion rights and human rights for the state of New York. You are going to hear a lot of lies about that proposition. And one of the big proponents of that lie is Senator Jack Martin's surprise. It is imperative when you vote, for whomever you vote, turn that ballot over and vote for Proposition 1 so we can make sure that women have the right to abortion in New York State. Now let me caution you, if Trump wins this election, he can have passed a national ban on all abortions. This proposition on our ballot will, I hate to say, not guarantee protection for women, but it is the best we can do at the present time. And it is extremely important that we all get everyone we know out to vote. The backbone of the National Republican Party, the cash cow of the National Republican Party, is the Nassau County Republican Organization. We in New York State know we have to stand up for human rights, and we will. Now, the difference to me between the Republican Party of today and the Democratic Party of today is this. The Democratic Party is an aspirational party. We aspire as Americans to be better and better and better. We struggle for what the founders called a more perfect union. The Republican Party, which dwells and profits from divisiveness and hatred, is not aspirational at all. It is desperation. And they are running scared now. And that's why Jack Martin's finally decided to come out and say some disgusting things about you. Disgusting and untrue things about you. So, we might say, these are damn scary times. And they are scary times. But I'm a student of history. And two of my favorites are Theodore Roosevelt, warts and all, as if we don't have warts. And another is Winston Churchill, warts and all. They believe that as scary as things are, how lucky are we to be able to stand up, to fight for what's right, to fight for democracy. And that's what's at stake come to October 26th. Oh, by the way, a little shameless self-promotion, that's early voting. And Jimmy, you didn't say that was my bill. I'm a little offended. That was my bill.
They were on your list.
Of course. We have to face this challenge so our children and our grandchildren will not face this challenge. Let's go forward. I thank you all with profound gratitude for being here, because we are in this fight together. And you know what? As Kamala Harris says, what does she say? When we fight, we win. Thank you all.